The rain had soaked through my clothes, my shoes squelching with every step as I walked down the darkened streets. My hands were trembling, not from the cold, but from the crushing weight of reality pressing down on me. My phone buzzed in my pocket for the 100th time that night, but I ignored it. I already knew what the messages would say. Reporters, strangers, and even former co-workers were all trying to reach me. I had gone viral, but none of that mattered because I had just lost my job. My daughter Zoe was asleep in our tiny apartment, blissfully unaware that everything was falling apart. Her surgery, the one thing that mattered most in the world, was slipping further and further out of reach. How could I tell her? How could I look into her big, hopeful eyes and tell her that I had failed? It had all started with a sandwich, a simple grilled cheese. I should have known better. In this world, kindness didn't pay the bills. I had been working at the Silicon Diner for over a year, juggling 2 jobs to make ends meet. During the day, I stocked shelves at a grocery store, lifting heavy boxes, my body sore and aching. Then I'd rush to the diner, putting on a smile no matter how exhausted I felt. The tips were sometimes good, sometimes terrible, but it was all I had. That night, I had been wiping down tables, counting the minutes until my shift ended. The place was nearly empty, just a few tech workers glued to their laptops in the corners. Then, the bell above the door chimed. "We're closing soon," Trevor, the host, muttered, without looking up from his phone. I glanced toward the entrance and saw him, a man in a plain black t-shirt and jeans, looking like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders. He rubbed his eyes, his hair slightly disheveled, exhaustion etched into his features. "Table for one," he said quietly. There was something about him, something familiar. I led him to a booth in my section, setting down a menu. "Long day?" I asked, trying to make conversation. He gave a tired chuckle. "You could say that. Trying to solve impossible problems with impossible deadlines? Sounds like you need comfort food." I smiled. "If you trust me, I'll bring you something good." He hesitated, then nodded. "Sure. Why not?" I hurried to the kitchen, even though the grill had already been turned off for the night. "Roberto, one last order. I'll help clean up after." He sighed but nodded. "Fine, what is it?" "Grilled cheese," I grinned. "But the special kind." Roberto rolled his eyes. "You and your mom's secret recipes." I prepped it just the way my mother used to. 3 kinds of cheese, crispy bacon, and a thin layer of honey butter grilled into the bread. As it sizzled on the pan, I brewed fresh coffee and grabbed the ripest banana from the fruit basket. When I set the plate down in front of my customer, his eyes widened slightly. "I didn't order this." "Trust me," I said, sliding into the seat across from him, just for a moment. "My mom used to make this for me when life felt impossible. And the bananas for potassium. You look like you haven't eaten properly all day." He took a bite, closed his eyes, sighed. "This is unexpected, in a good way." I laughed. The secret's in the honey butter. For a few minutes, we just sat there, him eating in silence while I watched the clock, knowing my shift was almost over. Then out of nowhere he asked, "Would you sit with me a little longer?" I hesitated. I wasn't supposed to, but something about him. "Just for a minute," I said, settling back into the seat. "Do you ever think about space?" he asked suddenly. I blinked. "Space?" "Yeah. What's out there? How small we are compared to it all." I smiled. "My daughter would love to hear you say that. She's obsessed with rockets." His eyes lit up, and for the first time, he looked like someone other than a tired stranger. "How old is she?" 8. My voice softened. "She's been in and out of the hospital a lot, but she never stops being curious about the world." He set his sandwich down. "That must be hard." I swallowed. "It is, but she's worth every second of worry, every extra shift, every sleepless night." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded, like he understood something I didn't. When he finished, I brought him the check, and he handed me his card without looking. That was when Trevor gasped. "Maya, do you know who that is?" he hissed, shoving his phone screen in my face. On it was a picture of my customer, standing at a tech conference, surrounded by cameras, Elon Musk. My stomach dropped. I had just served grilled cheese to one of the richest men in the world. Before I could even process that, my manager stormed out of his office. Maya, my office. Now, I barely had time to glance back at my customer before following Mr. Phillips inside. He slammed the door shut behind me. "What the hell were you doing out there?" "I was serving a customer," I said slowly. "Oh, is that what you call it?" he sneered, sitting and chatting while other tables waited, keeping the kitchen open late, making up your own menu items. I felt the panic rising in my chest. "Mr. Phillips, Enough!" He slammed his tablet down. "3 complaints. 3 customers said you were neglecting them to socialize with some scruffy guy in a t-shirt. But you're fired." His words hit like a punch to the gut. "No, please, Clear out your locker." He turned away, already dismissing me. "Your final check will be mailed." I stumbled out of the office, my mind spinning. How would I pay for Zoe's surgery now? How would I make rent? When I walked back through the diner, Elon Musk was gone. Only an empty plate remained. Outside, the rain had started falling. I didn't have an umbrella. I had given mine to an elderly customer earlier that day. As I started the long walk home, my phone buzzed again and again. I couldn't know that those calls were just the beginning. I couldn't know that by morning, my simple act of kindness would be seen by millions. I couldn't know that my life was about to change in ways I never could have imagined. But for now, all I knew was that I had just lost everything. All because of a grilled cheese sandwich. The rain poured harder as I walked home, my clothes clinging to my skin, my feet aching with every step. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, but I had no energy left to check it. What did it matter? I had lost my job. Without that paycheck, I had no idea how I was going to keep a roof over our heads, let alone afford Zoe's surgery. By the time I reached our apartment building, I was shivering. The elevator was broken again, so I dragged myself up 5 flights of stairs. My hands trembled as I unlocked the door, trying to keep quiet. Mrs. Martinez, our elderly neighbor, was asleep in the armchair, a blanket draped over her lap. At the sound of the door, she stirred. "Mija, you're home early and soaking wet. What happened?" I opened my mouth, but my voice caught. I didn't trust myself to speak. She saw my face and gasped. "Oh no, you lost your job?" I nodded, unable to hold back the tears anymore. Mrs. Martinez crossed herself. "Dios mío, those fools. What are you going to do?" Before I could answer, a small voice called from the bedroom. "Mommy?" I wiped my face quickly and forced a smile as I stepped into Zoe's room. She was sitting up in bed, surrounded by space books, her small body almost swallowed by the blankets. Even in the dim light, I could see how pale she was. "You're home early," she said, a hopeful smile lighting up her tired face. "Does that mean you can help me with my rocket project now?" I swallowed hard. How could I tell her? How could I tell her that everything I had been working for, every extra shift, every sleepless night, it had all just disappeared? I sat down beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Baby, we need to talk about something." Her smile faded. "Is it about the surgery? Did something happen?" No, I assured her quickly. "It's just, I won't be working at the diner anymore." Her eyes widened. "Did you get a better job?" My heart squeezed. "Not yet," I admitted. "But I will. Remember what we always say." She straightened her little shoulders and recited, "Johnson women never give up." I nodded, forcing a smile. "That's right." She yawned, her eyelids growing heavy. "Can we still do my rocket project tomorrow?" "Of course, baby." I reached for one of the books. "Let's learn about space together." An hour later, she was asleep, her space books scattered around her. I quietly gathered them up, pausing at a page about Mars colonization. I thought about the man from the diner. The way he had listened, the way his eyes had softened when I spoke about Zoe. Had I really served grilled cheese to Elon Musk? It seemed like a dream now. I stepped into the kitchen and finally checked my phone. 37 missed calls, dozens of text messages, hundreds of notifications. My hands shook as I opened the first message. It was a link to a video. My stomach dropped. The security footage from the diner had been leaked. Someone had recorded my interaction with Elon Musk and posted it online. The video had millions of views. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the comments. This is what real customer service looks like. Can't believe they fired her for this. Someone needs to start a GoFundMe. I closed my eyes, my head spinning. This wasn't what I wanted. I didn't need viral fame. I needed a job. I needed money for Zoe's surgery. A knock at the door made me jump. It was well past midnight. Who could be here at this hour? I peered through the peephole and saw a man in a suit holding business cards. Miss Johnson, he called softly. I represent the Morning Star News Network. We'd love to have you on our morning show to tell your story. I backed away from the door, my pulse racing. More knocks, more voices. Maya, we want to help. Just one interview. I turned off the lights and sank onto the couch, praying they wouldn't wake Zoe. My phone buzzed with another message. This time, it was from my mother. Baby girl, are you okay? Call me as soon as you can. I'm seeing you all over the news. I tried to call her, but my phone died mid-ring. When I plugged it in, more notifications flooded the screen. Emails from reporters, producers, podcast hosts, all wanting to hear my story. Around 3 a.m., the knocking finally stopped. I crept into Zoe's room and watched her sleep, trying to find some sense of peace. On her bedside table sat her piggy bank. We had been saving spare change for ice cream after her surgery. I had promised her everything would be okay. I had to fix this. Somehow. Dawn was breaking when I finally dozed off on the couch, still clutching my dead phone. I couldn't know that across town, multiple restaurant owners were having emergency meetings about me. I couldn't know that my viral moment had caught the attention of people far more powerful than local news stations. And I certainly couldn't know that the grilled cheese sandwich, my mother's special recipe, had set in motion a chain of events that would change not just my life, but the lives of countless others a few hours later. I woke to more knocking. But this time, it wasn't reporters at the door. It was my building manager, holding a stack of papers and looking nervous. Miss Johnson, he said, avoiding my eyes. We need to talk about your lease. I swallowed hard. What do you mean? He shifted uncomfortably. There have been complaints. Complaints? I frowned. I haven't done anything wrong. The news vans, he said, sighing. They're blocking the parking lot. Reporters are buzzing random apartments trying to find you. Other tenants are upset. It's causing problems. I felt like I was in a nightmare. Please, I said, my voice breaking. Just give me some time. This will all blow over soon. His expression softened slightly. You have until the end of the week to figure something out. After that, he hesitated, then handed me the papers. An eviction notice. My hands trembled as I clutched the document. This couldn't be happening. As soon as he left, I locked the door and slid to the floor, my knees pulled to my chest. Through the thin walls, I could hear reporters in the hallway, knocking on my neighbors' doors. Then, from Zoe's room, Mommy? I wiped my face quickly and rushed in. She was sitting up in bed, looking pale and unsteady. I don't feel so good, she whispered. My panic spiked. I hurried to her side, feeling her forehead. She was burning up. Did you take your medicine this morning? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She shook her head. I tried, but my hands were shaking too much to open the bottle. I felt something inside me snap. This wasn't about internet fame. This wasn't about viral videos. This was about Zoe. My daughter was getting sicker by the day, and I was wasting time worrying about news articles. I needed to get her surgery. I needed a real solution, and I needed it now. I picked up my phone, my hands shaking as I scrolled through the endless stream of notifications. Buried beneath the interview requests and messages from strangers were texts from Sarah, my old coworker at the diner. Sarah, Maya, you need to call me right now. This is insane. Sarah, every restaurant in town is talking about you. The owner of Starlight Cafe wants to meet you. Sarah, he said he's offering a manager position, full benefits, including health insurance. Health insurance. Those two words sent a jolt through my chest. I didn't care about fame. I didn't care about internet clout. I cared about one thing, Zoe's surgery. I dialed Sarah's number, pressing the phone tightly to my ear. She picked up immediately. Maya, oh my God, you're awake. Listen, David Chen. He owns Starlight Cafe. He's been trying to reach you all morning. He saw the video and wants to offer you a job. I exhaled, my head spinning. What's the catch? No catch. He liked what you did. He respects you. And Maya, he said he knows about Zoe's condition. His son had the same surgery 10 years ago. He wants to help. My stomach twisted. Where is he? Meet him at Starlight at 10. I looked at the clock. 9:15 a.m. I grabbed my coat and rushed to get Zoe ready. Mommy, where are we going? She asked, rubbing her sleepy eyes as I dressed her in a warm hoodie. Just a quick trip, I said, forcing a smile. You can bring your tablet. Mrs. Martinez had left early for a doctor's appointment, so I had no choice but to take Zoe with me. By the time we arrived at Starlight Cafe, I was out of breath. I pushed open the door, my pulse racing. The cafe was cozy, the scent of fresh coffee and warm pastries filling the air. It wasn't fancy like Silicon Diner. It felt like home. A man in his late 50s stood near the counter, his hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea. When he saw me, he smiled warmly. Maya, it's good to finally meet you. I shook his hand, my grip firm despite my exhaustion. Mr. Chen, thank you for... Before I could finish, the door behind me opened again, and everything changed. A woman in a sharp business suit stepped inside, her heels clicking against the tiled floor. Maya Johnson? She asked, striding toward me with purpose. I'm Sandra Torres from SpaceX. I hope I'm not interrupting, but we need to discuss our offer immediately. I blinked. Your offer? Before she could respond, the door chimed again. Another man entered, this one in a Tesla polo shirt, then another wearing a Blue Origin badge. Within minutes, the small cafe was filled with representatives from some of the biggest companies in the world. We'll double their offer. Full relocation package to California. Private school for your daughter. Stock options. I stood frozen as the offers flew around me, my head spinning. Mr. Chen watched in silence, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. I understand if you need to take one of these offers, he said softly. They can give you things I can't. I looked at him, then at the corporate representatives, their tablets and contracts ready to go. Then at Zoe, sitting quietly at a table, oblivious to the chaos, flipping through a book about space. My phone buzzed. Another email. Subject line. A test of character. The grilled cheese was just the beginning. Keep watching your mailbox. My pulse quickened. Who was he? Why did this feel like something bigger than just a viral video? Before I could process it, my phone rang. Mrs. Martinez. I answered immediately. Mrs. Martinez? What's wrong? Her voice trembled. Mija, it's Zoe's school. She collapsed. They called an ambulance. The world blurred. No, I whispered. I turned, my chair scraping against the floor. The executives were still talking, throwing out bigger and bigger numbers. I didn't care. I grabbed Zoe's hand. Mommy? She looked up at me, confused. We have to go, I said, already moving toward the door. From behind me, I heard the offers continue. Maya, think about this. These are once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. I didn't look back. My daughter needed me. Nothing else mattered. By the time I reached the school, the ambulance was already there. Zoe was on a stretcher, her little body pale, her breathing shallow. When she saw me, her lips quivered. Mommy, I'm sorry. My chest ached. No, baby, don't be sorry. I'm right here. I climbed into the ambulance beside her, clutching her hand as the sirens wailed. Everything else could wait. But something told me. This wasn't over yet. The ambulance ride felt like an eternity. I held Zoe's hand tightly, my heart pounding with every shallow breath she took. The paramedics moved quickly, checking her vitals, murmuring medical terms I barely understood. All I could do was sit there watching her, praying. Her oxygen levels are low, one of them said. Possible early-stage respiratory distress. We need to get her stabilized, another added. My stomach churned. I had heard those words before. Every time she had a bad episode, every time I rushed her to the hospital, it was always the same. She needed the surgery. She needed it now. I felt my phone vibrating in my pocket, but I ignored it. Nothing mattered right now except Zoe. When we arrived at the hospital, everything moved in a blur. Doctors, nurses, tests. They rushed her into a private room, attaching her to monitors, pumping oxygen through a mask. I stood back, frozen, helpless. Then Dr. Lewis, our usual pediatrician, appeared. "Maya," she said gently, touching my arm. I turned to her, desperate. "She's getting worse." "Isn't she?" Her expression was grim. "She doesn't have much time left, Maya. We can't delay the surgery any longer." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "But I don't have the money yet." Dr. Lewis hesitated. "We've been getting unusual inquiries about Zoe's case today. Media requests, offers from private donors. Do you know what's going on?" My head spun. Who was trying to dig into Zoe's medical records? Who was offering money? I didn't even know where to begin explaining. I need to figure something out," I whispered. Dr. Lewis nodded. "Do it fast." As she walked away, I collapsed into the chair beside Zoe's bed, gripping her small, fragile hand. She was asleep now, her breathing steadier, but still too weak. I couldn't let her down. I pulled out my phone, finally checking my notifications. My inbox was flooded with offers, interview requests, and messages from strangers. One email caught my eye. Subject urgent. Regarding your mother's grilled cheese recipe. I clicked it open. Your kindness reminded me of my own mother. Sometimes the simplest gestures have the biggest impact. Check your mailbox in an hour. E again. Who the hell was E? Before I could process it, another call came through. Tesla corporate office. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello." A professional-sounding woman spoke. "Miss Johnson, we've been trying to reach you regarding an opportunity. Are you familiar with our corporate food service program?" My heart pounded. Why is Tesla trying to hire me? "We believe your approach to customer service aligns with our values. We'd like to discuss a unique position." Before I could respond, my call waiting beeped. Another California number, then another, then another. I hung up, overwhelmed. Outside the hospital window, I could see news vans lining the streets. Reporters were waiting for me. This was spiraling out of control. I needed to clear my head. I stepped outside to get some air, my mind racing. I had job offers. Money was being thrown at me from all directions. But every one of these opportunities felt wrong. Then I saw it. A sleek black Tesla parked at the hospital entrance, its headlights flashing once. My phone buzzed. "Final test begins now. Car waiting outside. Your daughter will be safe." My hands trembled as I reread the message. This was insane. But at this point, what did I have to lose? I took one last look at the hospital, making sure Zoe was safe inside, then walked toward the car. The door opened automatically. Inside, a tablet was waiting on the leather seat. A message appeared on the screen. "Sometimes the biggest problems require the simplest solutions. Take a ride." My breath hitched. Whatever was happening, whatever this was, it ended tonight. I climbed in. The car drove itself, gliding through the dark, empty streets. I gripped my hands together, trying to stay calm. A new message appeared. "You've been part of an experiment, Maya. Not just about kindness, but about leadership. Tell me, why did you help a stranger that night?" I hesitated, then typed my response. "Because he needed help. That's all. The same reason I help anyone who needs it." The car made a sharp turn onto a familiar street. A new message appeared. "Even when helping others cost you your job, your apartment, nearly cost you your daughter's surgery?" My fingers hovered over the screen. Kindness isn't about cost and benefit. It's about being human. The car slowed in front of a building I recognized immediately. Silicon Diner. Except it wasn't the same. The windows were lit up, people moving inside, but everything looked different. The car door unlocked. Last phase of the test. Go inside. I took a shaky breath, then stepped out. When I opened the diner's door, I froze. Everything had changed. Gone were the cold, high-end decorations. Instead, warm lighting filled the space. The booths were cozy, welcoming. A new sign above the counter read, "Johnson's Family Diner." My mother's grilled cheese recipe was framed on the wall, and sitting in a booth, waiting for me, was Elon Musk. But he wasn't alone. Beside him sat Mr. Chen from Starlight Cafe and several other people, tech executives, restaurant industry leaders, community organizers. My heart pounded. Elon stood. "Please join us." I hesitated, then sat across from him. He smiled. "It's time you understood what's really been happening." I swallowed. "What is this?" "6 months ago," Elon began, "I started a secret project. Not about rockets, not about electric cars, but about something more fundamental." He gestured around the diner. "Human connection." My stomach flipped. Mr. Chen spoke up. "We were all part of it, looking for someone who could lead a new kind of movement." Elon nodded. "Anyone can go viral. Anyone can become famous for a moment. But true character, true kindness, that's rare." He slid a folder across the table. "This diner is yours if you want it, but it's more than that." I opened the folder, my hands shaking. Inside was a contract. Chief Operating Officer of the Kitchen Table Project. Elon continued, "We're launching a chain of community restaurants, affordable meals, job training, medical assistance for families in need, and we want you to run it." I stared at the contract, then at the medical bills, marked paid in full. Tears blurred my vision. "Your daughter's surgery is covered," Elon said softly. "This isn't just about a sandwich, Maya. It's about proving that kindness still matters." I pressed a hand to my mouth, unable to speak. Mr. Chen smiled. "You chose connection over money, community over corporate greed. That's exactly what we need." I looked at the framed recipe on the wall, then back at them. I thought about every struggle, every sleepless night, every sacrifice. This wasn't just a job. This was a chance to change lives. I looked at Elon, at Mr. Chen, then at the contract. I picked up the pen and signed. The pen felt heavy in my hand as I signed my name, my fingers trembling. I could hardly believe what was happening. A week ago, I was just a struggling single mother, working myself to the bone, praying I could somehow scrape together enough money to save my daughter's life. Now I was sitting across from one of the richest men in the world, signing a contract that would not only secure Zoe's surgery, but give me a purpose far greater than I ever imagined. As soon as the ink dried, Elon smiled. "Welcome to the team, Maya." The weight on my chest lifted. I had done it. I had saved my daughter. But more than that, I had found something I didn't even know I was looking for. A chance to help others the way I had always wanted to. Mr. Chen poured me a cup of tea. "Take a breath," he said kindly. "This is a lot to take in." I let out a shaky laugh. "Yeah, you could say that." Elon leaned forward. "I know this is overwhelming, but we've been watching you, Maya. Not in a creepy way," he added with a smirk, "but in a way that matters. We wanted to see how you would react to pressure, to sudden fame, to choices that could have changed you. And through it all, you stayed true to yourself." I shook my head, still trying to process. "I don't understand. Why me? I'm just a waitress." "No," he said firmly. "You're a leader. You just didn't know it yet." I felt my throat tighten. Me? A leader? I had spent my whole life just trying to survive. "Look," Elon continued, "people always assume that changing the world takes billions of dollars. But it doesn't. It takes moments. It takes people who care enough to show up day after day and do the right thing, even when no one is watching." I looked at Mr. Chen, who nodded. "We've all had moments like yours, Maya, moments where we had to decide what kind of person we wanted to be. Your moment just happened to be caught on camera." I let out a breath I didn't even realize I was holding. For so long, I had believed the world didn't notice people like me. But maybe, just maybe, I had been wrong. Elon pushed another envelope across the table. "This is for you." Hesitantly, I opened it. Inside was a letter. Handwritten. "Maya, thank you for reminding me that kindness still exists. I've spent my life looking at the future, but you reminded me that the present is just as important. This project is yours now. Make it something incredible. P.S. Zoe mentioned wanting to be an astronaut. SpaceX's Junior Space Camp has an opening this summer." My hands shook as I lowered the letter. "Zoe," I whispered. She had talked to him. About space. About her dream. I wiped at my eyes, overwhelmed by emotion. Elon's voice softened. She's going to be okay, Maya. She has you. And now, she has a whole team behind her. I swallowed hard and nodded. So, he said, smiling, are you ready to change the world? I took a deep breath. Then I smiled back. More than ready. 2 weeks later, I stood in the doorway of Johnson's Family Diner, staring at the bright, welcoming space that was now mine. The diner had been completely transformed. Instead of overpriced entrees and stiff, formal service, we now had an open-door policy, affordable meals for everyone, a pay-it-forward board where customers could buy meals for those in need, and a training program for people who had struggled to find work. And best of all, we had a partnership with local hospitals, covering meals for families dealing with medical crises. Just like I had been. I glanced at the framed recipe on the wall. My mother's grilled cheese. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest gestures. I turned to the team waiting for me. Former co-workers from the diner, new hires from the community, and even Mr. Chen, who had insisted on helping launch the first location. Okay, I said, taking a deep breath. Let's open the doors. The moment felt surreal. I had spent so long struggling, fighting just to stay afloat. But now I was building something that mattered. The doors opened and the first customers walked in. Some familiar faces, some new. And then, Mommy! I turned just in time to catch Zoe as she ran into my arms, her laughter like music. She was healthy, she was happy, and she was here. Mrs. Martinez followed behind her, smiling warmly. Mija, I thought you'd want some extra hands today. I hugged Zoe tightly, kissing the top of her head. Did you see? She said, pointing up at the sign. It has our name. Yes, baby, I whispered. It does. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. 3 months later, the diner was thriving. The kitchen table project had expanded faster than any of us had expected. More locations, more families helped, more lives changed. One night after a long shift, I sat down in my office. The same office where I had once been fired. I opened my laptop, scrolling through emails. Among them was one from Elon. Subject, still changing the world. I smiled and typed back. Always. Just as I hit send, Zoe ran into the office holding a letter. Mommy, look, my acceptance letter from space camp. My heart swelled as I took it from her, beaming. Baby, that's amazing. She grinned. I'm going to learn all about rockets. I pulled her into a hug, tears stinging my eyes. This was what it had all been for. Not just for me, but for her, for the life we had fought so hard to build. And as I sat there, holding my daughter, surrounded by the warmth of our new future, I finally understood. Sometimes all it takes is a grilled cheese sandwich to change the world. As the months passed, Johnson's Family Diner became more than just a restaurant. It became a symbol. People came not just for the food, but for the warmth, the kindness, and the sense of community. Word spread quickly. Families struggling to afford meals found comfort at our tables, knowing they could eat without judgment. Former employees from Silicon Diner, the very ones who had been laid off, now had a new place to work, a place where they were valued. And then there were the stories. People would sit in these booths and share their struggles, their hopes, their dreams. And just like that night with Elon, I sat with them, listening. The pay-it-forward board filled up within weeks. Handwritten notes covered the wall, each one a meal waiting for someone who needed it. For the single mom who just needs a break. For the kid who had a rough day at school. For the old man who lost his wife but still comes here for coffee every morning. Every time I walked past that board, I felt my heart swell. This was bigger than me. This was bigger than a viral video or a single act of kindness. This was a movement. One afternoon, as I was wiping down a table, a familiar voice startled me. So, do I still get my grilled cheese? I turned, my breath catching. Elon stood in the doorway, dressed casually, a smirk on his face. I laughed. Only if you promise to eat the banana this time. He chuckled and took a seat at his usual booth. As I placed the plate in front of him, he looked around the diner, nodding in approval. You did good, Maya. I smiled. We did good. He took a bite of the sandwich, closing his eyes like he had the first time. Still the best grilled cheese I've ever had, he murmured. I crossed my arms. It's the honey butter. He smirked. No, it's you. I shook my head, laughing. So what brings you here? He set his sandwich down and leaned forward. A new idea. I raised an eyebrow. Another space project? He chuckled. Not this time. He gestured around the diner. People need more places like this. Places that don't just serve food, but serve people. I want to expand this even further. More diners, more communities, and I want you to lead it. My stomach flipped. Elon, I don't know anything about running a company that big. He tilted his head. Neither did I. But here we are. I exhaled. What's the catch? No catch. You stay true to your vision. You keep doing what you do best, and we'll make sure it reaches as many people as possible. I looked around at the diner, at the people who had become my second family. The thought of taking this even further, of helping even more people. I'll think about it, I said finally. He smiled. That's all I ask. He finished his sandwich, left a generous tip on the table, and walked out. As I cleared his plate, I found something tucked under the napkin. A note. For the woman who reminded me that the biggest ideas start with the smallest moments. Keep changing the world. E. I pressed the note to my chest, letting the weight of it sink in. Later that night, as I sat with Zoe, helping her pack for space camp, she looked up at me. Mommy? Yeah, baby? She bit her lip. Are we happy now? I blinked, surprised by the question. I thought about all the nights I had spent worrying, all the mornings waking up exhausted, pushing through, holding on to hope. I thought about the kindness of strangers, the way one simple meal had turned my world upside down. I thought about this diner, this home we had built, and the future still waiting for us. I smiled. Yeah, baby, I said, hugging her tight. We're happy now. And for the first time in a long, long time, I truly believed it. I spent the next few months immersed in building a new life, one where every morning I woke up with a sense of purpose and a heart full of hope. Each day I walked into the diner with the memory of my struggles still fresh, but now with the knowledge that every hardship had led me to this moment. I was no longer just a waitress fighting to keep my daughter alive. I had become a leader in a movement that believed in the power of kindness and community. Every day was a balancing act. Managing the diner, overseeing the kitchen table project, and keeping up with the growing demands of our newfound fame meant that my schedule was more hectic than ever. Yet I found solace in the smiles of customers who came in not just for a meal, but for a moment of warmth in their lives. I greeted everyone by name if I could, remembered their favorite orders, and took the time to listen to their stories, even if it meant working through my own exhaustion. One afternoon after closing time, I sat alone at one of the worn wooden tables, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee and reading through emails that poured in from across the country. There were offers for partnerships, invitations to speak at community events, and even messages from people I had never met who simply wanted to thank me for being a beacon of hope. One email in particular caught my eye. A message from a local community center asking if I could help set up a free meal program for low-income families. My heart swelled at the thought. This was exactly what I had always wanted, to give back, to create a space where everyone felt valued. As I sat there, I heard the sound of soft footsteps approaching. I looked up to see Mr. Chen standing by the doorway, his face gentle in the fading light. Maya, he said quietly, I know things have been overwhelming, but look at what you've built here. People trust you. They come here not just for food, but for hope. I smiled, feeling a lump in my throat. I used to think that one small act couldn't change the world, but now, every day I see that even the smallest gestures add up to something big. His words resonated deeply with me, affirming that every sacrifice had been worth it. The next morning, as the sun rose over the city, I arrived at the diner to find a buzz of activity. Volunteers were setting up tables, local artists had hung inspiring murals along the walls, and a community board near the entrance was filled with thank you notes, offers of help, and even sketches from children who had visited. I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. It was as if our little diner had become a safe haven for anyone who needed a reminder that they mattered. During our daily briefing that morning, I gathered my team. Some were longtime friends from my days at Silicon Diner. Others were new faces who had found work here because they believed in our mission. Every day we have the power to change someone's life, I told them, my voice trembling with emotion. It doesn't take a grand gesture. Sometimes all it takes is a smile, a kind word, or even a well-made grilled cheese sandwich. One of the new hires, a shy young man named Javier, raised his hand hesitantly. Maya, what do you do when you feel like you can't keep going, when everything seems too heavy? I looked into his earnest eyes and remembered my own darkest days. I remember that even in the toughest moments, there's always a reason to fight, I replied softly. For me, it's Zoe. For you, maybe it's your family, your dreams, or the hope that tomorrow will be better. We all have something that makes us strong. Later that day, as I was closing up, my phone rang again. It was a familiar number, Elon. His voice came through calm and reassuring. Maya, I was just checking in. How are you holding up? I could hear the sincerity in his tone, and for a moment, it felt like the weight of the world was a little lighter. I'm managing, I admitted. I have my struggles, but I also see the change we're making here. It keeps me going. He paused, then said, Remember, the true measure of success isn't the number on your paycheck or the fame you receive. It's the lives you touch and the difference you make. You're doing something remarkable, Maya. Those words echoed in my mind as I locked up for the night. I walked home under the starry sky, the cool breeze carrying whispers of the day's conversations and the laughter from the diner. I thought about Zoe, sleeping soundly in her room, her dreams unburdened by the weight of our past hardships. I knew that there would be challenges ahead. There were still whispers of corporate interest and the occasional threat from those who didn't understand our mission, but I also knew that I was not alone. I had a community, a team, and a future built on kindness. One quiet evening, I found myself revisiting the old Silicon Diner, the place where my journey had taken an unexpected turn. The building was empty now, its windows dark, yet I could almost feel the echoes of my past. Every smile, every tear, every moment of connection. I stood there for a long time reflecting on how one simple act of kindness had set off a chain reaction that changed everything. I realized that even though I had lost my job that night, I had gained something far more valuable, a chance to create a world where compassion was at the heart of every decision. As time went on, the diner expanded into new neighborhoods, each location maintaining the same spirit of warmth and community. I often traveled between them, meeting with local leaders, listening to stories of hardship and hope, and reminding myself why I had chosen this path. I learned that true leadership wasn't about making grand speeches or wielding power. It was about listening, understanding, and lifting others up when they felt like they had nowhere to turn. One day while I was mentoring a group of young volunteers, a little girl with big curious eyes approached me. Maya, she asked shyly, why do you always smile even when things are hard? I knelt down to her level, looking into her innocent eyes. Because, sweetheart, I said gently, every smile is a promise that things can get better. When I smile, I remind myself that no matter how tough life gets, there's always a reason to hope. The girl nodded, and I could see that tiny spark of understanding ignite within her. Even on the toughest days, when the pressure of running a growing business and the constant media attention threatened to overwhelm me, I never forgot that one small act of kindness had changed everything. I remembered the taste of that perfectly grilled cheese, the warmth of a shared moment with a stranger, and the way those moments rippled out into the lives of so many others. As I sat in my office one late night, long after the diner had closed, I looked out the window at the city lights. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the long nights of uncertainty, the tears shed in solitude, and the relentless determination to never give up. I thought about Zoe and her dreams of space, about the community that had rallied around us, and about the unexpected chance to lead something greater than myself. I realized that while life had thrown countless challenges my way, it had also given me endless opportunities to rise above them. every challenge, every setback, had been a stepping stone to something bigger, a movement built on love, resilience, and the belief that even the smallest gesture can spark a revolution. The air inside Johnson's family diner was warm and filled with laughter, the scent of freshly brewed coffee and melting cheese lingering in the air. I stood behind the counter, wiping down the surface, watching as customers came and went, each of them carrying their own stories, their own struggles, and their own hopes. Zoe sat in the corner booth, her space camp acceptance letter proudly displayed next to her plate of pancakes. She had spent the morning scribbling notes about planets and rocket launches, her excitement impossible to contain. Every now and then, she would look up at me and flash a smile, and I would smile back, knowing that every sacrifice, every sleepless night had been worth it. But as much as things had changed for me, not everyone had found the same path forward. Outside, sitting on a bench across the street, was Mr. Phillips. His crisp suits were gone, replaced with worn-out clothes and scuffed shoes. He was slouched forward, holding a newspaper that he wasn't reading, his face etched with the exhaustion of someone who had lost everything. Silicon Diner had shut down a month ago. The bad press surrounding my firing, coupled with the rise of Johnson's family diner, had driven away customers. No one wanted to support a business that treated people like numbers. Mr. Phillips had tried to move on, taking a management job at another restaurant, but it hadn't lasted long. Word had spread about how he treated employees, how he valued money over people, and soon no one wanted to work with him. I watched him for a while, feeling a strange mix of emotions, pity, justice, a sense of closure. He had fired me for being too kind, for taking a moment to connect with another human being. And now kindness was the very thing that had built my success, while his cruelty had left him with nothing. I could have gone out there. I could have offered him a meal, a seat inside, maybe even a second chance. But some people had to learn the hard way. Some people had to sit in their failures and realize that the world doesn't reward those who step on others to get ahead. He glanced up and saw me watching. Our eyes met. For a moment, I thought he might say something, might call out to me, might try to apologize. But he didn't. He just looked away, folding the newspaper in his lap, staring down at the pavement as if searching for something he had lost a long time ago. Inside, the diner was full, the tables bustling with conversations, the pay-it-forward board overflowing with notes from people who had experienced the kindness of strangers. This was the world I had fought to build, a world where people looked out for one another, a world where one small act of kindness could change everything. I had spent so much of my life struggling, believing that people like me didn't get happy endings. But here I was, thriving, growing, changing the world. Zoe ran up to me, holding a new drawing she had made. It was a picture of us standing outside the diner, surrounded by stars. "One day I'm going to build a rocket," she said confidently, "and I'm going to take you to space with me." I laughed, hugging her tightly. "I can't wait to see that day," I whispered. This journey had started with nothing more than a grilled cheese sandwich, a simple act of kindness that had set everything into motion. Sometimes we don't realize the impact of what we do. Sometimes the smallest gestures ripple out in ways we could never imagine. For anyone watching this, wondering if kindness is worth it, wondering if doing the right thing, even when it's hard, will ever pay off, let me tell you this: it does. It always does. Now I want to hear from you. Has a small act of kindness ever changed your life? Or have you ever been the one to make a difference without even realizing it? Leave a comment below and share your story. Because who knows, your words might just inspire the next person who needs to hear them. And remember, sometimes the biggest changes in the world start with the simplest things. Sometimes all it takes is a sandwich,